it's Sigrun with the Universal Pagan Temple, and thank you for joining me for this video. We're going to be talking about Tim Pool and the guests that he's been having on lately and how it's affecting the pagan community. If you're new here, thank you for joining me, and if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. And of course, we have all sorts of fun links down below in the description, including links to our Patreon, and I'm going to start doing special videos for Patreon here, but that is in the future, but that will be a supporters only type of video. But let's get into the video. So, Tim Pool, y'all might know him as Tim Stool or Tim Drool, the milquetoast fence sitter. I have actually watched Tim Pool for a number of years, at least since 2019, and I've seen his evolution over the years, and now he's getting more conservative. He's had on several anti-pagan pastors and priests and regular guests that are, they speak negatively about the pagan community. Now, Tim Pool is kind of grifting on this, getting these extremist Christians on, like Joel Weebon, who I've talked about numerous times on this channel already. And then a regular guest that he has on is the Catholic cartoonist of Freedom Tunes, Seamus Coughlin. And he talks shit about pagans and witches all the time. And of course, he's one of the ones that thinks that only liberals are pagans and witches. He completely just never acknowledges the existence of conservative pagans and witches. Now, a couple of days ago on the Culture War podcast, Tim Pool had on both Seamus Coughlin and Friar Chad Rippinger. I think that's how you say his name, but I've watched a couple of videos about it, and they obviously go into exorcisms, because I guess Friar Chad is an exorcist, but yeah, they start talking about how Gen Z women are being drawn into witchcraft. But oddly enough, they never bring up paganism in this conversation because they're obviously afraid to talk about it. And then the friar starts talking about the classes of witchcraft, in which he states that there's 3 classes of witch, where the lowest one is, your average TikTok witch. Well, the TikTok witches, they're discovering witchcraft, but then, obviously Seamus Coughlin had some very shitty things to say about those types of witches. And then he says the middle tier witches who have studied witchcraft. Okay. Then the friar goes into the 3rd classification of witch for him, which is these generational witches that don't call themselves witches, but are involved in shady dealings, but they pretend to be normal on the surface, but then they're doing all sorts of dark arts below. But yeah, that's more hearsay and conspiracy. Generational witches that I know are into folk magic, hedge magic. So yeah, this is just goofy Christian propaganda once again. And then, in another part of the interview, the priest starts talking about those who are more likely to be demonically possessed, because the friar is, he is an exorcist. Okay. So he's talking about who is most likely to become possessed, and he brings up women who have been sexually assaulted. And then he also says that women are more likely to ask for help when they are demonically possessed. But then something came up. he never brought up the thousands of boys that were molested throughout the years by the Catholic Church. And according to his definition, yes, sexual assault will bring upon, demonic possession in some cases. But what about these boys that were molested and raped by priests? What about them? You don't bring that up, which is an absolute shame, and the shame on the church, because this is an ongoing shame upon the church, the Catholic Church. And it's not just the Catholic Church. It's, every single Christian denomination has this issue of pedophilia. And it's not just women who are sexually assaulted. No, it's, children as well. It's not just boys, but young girls as well. And then he brings another part of, what causes demonic possession, and he brings up porn. Okay, I understand that porn is, mostly negative on the soul, but, while Christians bash porn, they consume a lot of it. So do Muslims, oddly enough. And then he mentions drug addiction. And then he mentions the occult. So I'm going to say this right now. I see a lot of so-called ex-witches saying that they've returned to Christ after embracing and practicing witchcraft. But when you go to investigate and you ask these former witches questions like, okay, what did you do? Which gods did you worship? They never tell you which gods they worshipped or goddesses. They always say, oh, it was the devil. Okay, that's strike one. You're a liar. Strike two. When you ask them what type of rituals you were doing, they go into, oh, I was messing around with tarot and astrology. Okay, that's strike two. You're a liar. Because using tarot, reading tarot, being interested in astrology does not necessarily make you a big-time occultist. Everybody, anybody can be into astrology. Anybody can get a tarot reading. Anybody can read tarot, for that matter. And it's just, they're doing this for clicks, for attention. They want to sell their book, if they've got one, where they detail in a couple of paragraphs their experience with witchcraft, but then they go on about the gospel because they weren't getting enough attention with the occult, if they were even actually in it. A lot of them were just New Agers that got scared of their shadow self when they came across it, that they retreated to Christianity because they weren't willing to do the work on themselves to realize, oh, why am I scared? It's yourself that you're scared of, your darker part of your personality. And then they go embrace Christianity, and then that darker side of their personality actually comes out in Christianity, because Christianity attracts a lot of negativity, and it brings out a lot of negativity in people. And I'm going to get into that in a moment. And this is a side effect of American Christianity, where it brings out, in specific American Christianity, where it brings out so much negativity. Okay, but back to the topic at hand. He brings up the occult and demonic possession, but really Christians, like I just said, it brings out a lot of negativity, and they share a lot of negativity. So Christians are more at risk for being demonically possessed because, Christianity, especially this evangelical Christianity that we see in America, makes you spiritually very weak. And these pastors of these Christian churches here, they don't know how to deal with demonic possession. So that's why a lot of people go to Catholicism, because they know how to deal with demonic possession when it's just really just, the force of will versus the forces of a demon, okay. But yeah, these evangelical pastors, they're just trained to suck money out of you. They're not trained to do much of anything else. But then Tim Pool and his crew start to connect demonic possession with liberalism, and that to a certain extent is true, where a lot of liberals are acting demonically possessed, but I see it in conservatives as well, especially conservative Christians, where I just said that the evangelicals have no way of dealing with demonic possession because, their rituals or any rituals that they could have access to, they don't, because they believe it's demonic in the first place. And so they're just stuck. Okay, but yeah, the conservative Christians that I've run across, most of them behave in a possessed way where their negativity is just, it projects onto you in the same way the negativity of of a liberal, an insane liberal will project onto you in the same way. And they create so much negative energy, these conservative Christians, and these malevolent entities, demons, are attracted to. And while I'm ranting about this, yes, I do believe that demons are real, and that pagans, we have ways of dealing with demons. We do, and there's a long history of it, especially within the Egyptian tradition, Egyptian pagan tradition. But yeah, the other denominations within Christianity are really shit out of luck with dealing with demons. And so we get a lot of this behavior out of Christians in America because of our, concentrated population of, different Protestant denominations, non-denominational, what have you, because of all this negativity that Christianity induces. There's a concentration of it here. Here's Debo again. But back to Gen Z women embracing witchcraft and paganism. It's actually a positive thing, even though some of them are liberal, okay. Some of them are conservative, okay. But it's a sign of the times where a lot of people are rejecting the Abrahamic faith. It's not just women, but men as well. And I'm not excluding, millennials or Gen X or, boomers out of this talk, but Gen Z men, it's not all of them are, becoming Christian like they say. If any polls say that they are, it's just a passing trend. Like I said, I think in the last video or two, that there was a resurgence in Christianity, church attendance, Bible sales after Charlie Kirk's assassination. But with that, it goes the way of 9/11, where they kind of do it for a couple months and then they go back to what they were doing prior. So it's just a passing trend in, Gen Z men. They see paganism and they see their ancestral faith, whether it's, Norse paganism, Celtic paganism, Roman paganism, Greek paganism. They're returning to it, and they're making a historical study out of it, which is, very good. Debo, honey, calm down. He's using my chair as a scratching post. He's very loud. Where they're making a historical study out of it, and they're becoming scholars in their own right, wise men. And then these Gen Z women are studying witchcraft, which is appropriate, and embracing the goddess or goddesses, where in, Christianity, where a lot of them came from, it's obviously God only. Well, they're going to rebound onto paganism And then, eventually they're going to if they're wise enough, do the self-healing enough to start to discover the pagan gods as well, in addition to the goddesses, have a balanced path and a balanced outlook on spirituality. And I understand where, a lot of young girls will, go into paganism and go to goddesses initially. It is important to start to research pagan gods as well, because not all the pagan gods are like, the Abrahamic god. A lot of them are very, their energy is different. It's understanding, it's strong, but it's not oppressive, negative like the Christian god egregore energy is. And then one point I wanted to make that I nearly forgot about as I brought up Charlie Kirk is that Tim Pool starts talking about the witches, the supposed witches on Etsy that cursed Charlie Kirk a week before he was assassinated. And the priest was like, okay, that might have something to do with it or might not. It's hard to tell. Well, I've already done a video on that, and it's pretty unlikely, because if you're paying chump change for a spell, it's not going to work. I mean, a curse is involved. It's not easy to do, and you're not going to be, if you're actually a serious witch that has any sort of experience, you're not going to be charging, $9 for a curse? No, you're going to be charging big money if you're charging anything for curses. But then that leads me into morality within witchcraft. You're not supposed to curse anybody that hasn't done anything directly to you. So there you go. But Tim Pool's just bringing on all these Christians that are just negative towards paganism, and he has a very big audience. He's not the biggest podcaster, but he's got a pretty sizable and influential base, and he's just bringing these people on, and he's letting them just rant and rave about Christianity, and from a conservative, almost Zionist standpoint at some points. That's not too positive on paganism, and I know he has a lot of criticism. He says civil war at least every week. So I'm guessing with if he wants new audiences, he better stop saying civil war so much and only go bring in these Christian extremists to grift off of them and to fence it on the whole thing. But anyway, I think I've ranted for long enough. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, blessed be.